Want to know how Essendon can become a top 4 team eventually? Well, I'm going to cut to the chase because that's what we're all here for, right? And that's what we all want to know. How can this team in the next year or 2 or 3 finish in the top 4 for the first time since 2001? Can you believe it's been 24 years since we finished in the top 4? My God.
And it's been forever.
Here we are in the bye week, and I thought it was time maybe for a little bit of a debrief and a little bit of a reassessment. Whilst we are only 3 games in, quite a lot has happened in terms of the narrative surrounding the club. We've already seen quite a big shift in expectation and quite a big shift in the language coming out of the club. A lot of the words around the term rebuilding have resurfaced. This wasn't necessarily the case before round 0, but it started to creep in. The club was insistent that we're a very, very young team. We've heard this language coming out of the club that they're young, they're young, they're young.
You change narratives like the wind.
So in just 3 weeks, quite a lot has changed in terms of the perception, the narrative, and everything about how the club is perceived. So what do we need to do if we're going to get there in the next couple of years? Well, number 1 is know where you are at. And it seems self-explanatory, doesn't it? It seems simple. But if there's one thing that Essendon has not done very well over the last 2.5 decades, it's the simple things, right? Has any Essendon team over the last 24 years really known where they were at? Probably not. You could take a team from 2007, a team from 2004, a team from 2018, and no one in the media, no one at the club will be able to tell you if the club was rebuilding or if they were contending. No one at the club knows where they're at. But there are signs that this club now does. And that alludes to some of the language that was coming out of the club, some of the expectation that we're a few years away from being a genuine contender, and some of the signs that the club thinks they could be contending within a few years if they stick to the current plan. Strong clubs know where they are at, and they can build their list accordingly because they know where they're at. Would a club that knew where they were in the cycle of winning a premiership pick up players like Matthew Allen, Scott Camporelli, Ty Zantuck, Mark Alvey, all those sort of players?
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
Of course not. All the strong clubs are realistic in where they're at in terms of the premiership cycle. And Essendon, it does seem, at least at the moment, that they do seem to be realistic as to where the club is currently at. Number 2, continue to go to the draft. Don't go for players from other clubs unless it fills a specific gap in your team. For example, if you didn't have a ruckman and we've got 2, but if you didn't, you might look at the pre-season draft or from other clubs to pick up a specific ruckman that you need to fill a specific role, or a key backman to fill a specific role. Don't just get a player from another club just because they're available and they're a good player. They might be a good player, but unless they fill a specific need, you shouldn't be getting them. You should be building your team via the draft. Of course, if it's a no-brainer and an outstanding player, an A-grade player, a generational player becomes available, like a Harley Reid for argument's sake, that's different. You might look at getting a player like that, who wouldn't? But those players aside, don't just go for players from other clubs unless they fill a specific gap that you're looking for. This is a problem that Essendon has fallen into in the past, and from all reports, it looks like they're trying to build through the draft. You can maintain a good team by topping up from outside the draft, but you have to build a good team in the first place from the draft. That's the key. Yes, you can maintain an already good team, but you must build the team through the draft if you're to get up to that top 4 area. Very few teams have been a top 4 team or a premiership contender if they haven't built their team through the draft. That's something that Essendon must do if they were to look at becoming a top 4 team in the next couple of years. And by all reports, it's looking like they're going to do that. We're going to have a pretty good draft hand this year. Melbourne, as I speak, have just lost to Geelong as I'm recording this video. They're 0-4. Essendon, well, we're not quite sure where we're going to finish. I'd suggest we'd probably have 2 picks in the top 10 at worst. So it'll be interesting to see how that manifests itself come trade and draft period. But definitely, to become a top 4 team, you must continue to go to the draft and stop picking up players from other clubs unless they fill a specific need. Number 3, don't try to be the best at everything. Excel at something. This is an observational thing that I've noticed about all the great teams over the years. All the great teams are elite at least one or two parts of the game. When has Essendon ever been elite at anything, at any part of the game?
Never.
Bomber Thompson said when he got to the club, around a decade ago now, to coach for the second time, when are we going to learn how to defend? Essendon has never been able to defend well over the last 25 years and doesn't seem to have really got much better at it. Focus on being the best at something. Obviously, everybody wants to be the best at everything. The problem with that is jack of all trades and master of none is not really the way to succeed. If you just try to be 5% better, 6% better, we'll improve by 10%, etc., etc., well, guess what? Every single club in the AFL is trying to do that. You need to pick a part of the game that's your strength and make that your strength and be elite at it. It could be defence. It could be ball movement. It could be kicking efficiency. What the great clubs tend to do is take some part of the game, an important part of the game, that's an important metric for winning premierships and just winning games of football, and excel at it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the best at everything, but at least there's something they can hang their hat on and say, we are the best at this part of the game. We are the best at that part of the game. Essendon has never been the best at any part of the game. And one thing that does frustrate me a little bit, we do hear quite a bit from the coach that we want to get a bit better. We want to just improve across the board. It all sounds good, trying to improve across the board. Everybody wants to improve across the board, but you're not really getting an edge on the opposition. You really need to focus on a strength, on a particular part of the game that's important, like those things I mentioned, ball movement or defence, or whatever it is, and excel at it, be the best. You can hang your hat on and say, we're number one at this. Once you've mastered it, then you can move on to something else. All the best teams excel at something. Essendon excel at nothing, and until we excel at something, we're not going to be a top 4 team. If you like this channel, please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do so. I work hard to get these videos out every couple of days. I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. Number 4, stick with the coach. I know a lot of fans do get upset and they want to move the coach on whenever we have bad losses. It's sort of part of football that football fans from all clubs tend to want to sack the coach when things aren't going well. But successful clubs always give the coach time. And I'm heartened by the fact that Essendon extended Brad Scott by a year. A lot of people thought it was controversial. I probably was a bit uneasy about it at the time. But now that I think about it, given the change in narrative surrounding where the club seems to be at and the belief that the club is building what they hope is long-term success through sound planning, good draft management, and a steady back office and coaching regime, it makes sense to hold on to the coach and create a stable environment if they consider that Brad Scott is the man. I'll give you a couple of examples. Remember Damien Hardwick when he was coaching Richmond? Now, they had those elimination final losses. I think they had 3 in a row. Then the year after that, they slumped down to 12th or 13th with 7 wins in 2016. Everybody, and I mean everybody, was saying Hardwick needs to go. He'd been there for 7 or 8 years at the time, hadn't really achieved anything. They'd fallen away out of the finals after having 3 years in the finals, but they stuck with him. And the very, very next year, they bounced back and won the premiership. We saw the same with Bomber Thompson at Geelong. They slumped out of the finals in 2006. They finished 10th on the ladder after making the finals in 04 and 05. And everybody thought, well, they've fallen out of the finals now. They're spiralling down the bottom of the ladder. They've missed their chance. But they stuck with the coach. They had a review, a famous review there. And the very next year, they went on to win the premiership. Most successful clubs have stable environments. And that's not just the coach. It's also the back office. It's also the president, and it's also the board. How many premiership teams have had unstable coaching regimes? Not many. So I think Essendon does need to stick with the coach. And no, people, James Hird is not coming back. I'm sorry to break it to you. That's not going to happen. I know a lot of people would like that. That would be a mistake. That's never going to happen. As much as people get frustrated when teams aren't winning and blame it all on the coach, stable environments are very, very important. And Essendon look like they've made a sound decision in this regard. Number 5, don't panic when things don't go our way. As long as the fundamentals are in place, the club should be okay. For too long, Essendon has overreacted to a string of losses or one poor season. Often the path to a premiership isn't linear. I know a lot of people, when they're building a team, would like to think that if you're coming from the bottom and you finish 12th, you go from 12th to 10th to 8th to 4th to runners-up to premiers. but that doesn't happen. Often there are years where you go backwards one year. This happens all the time. It's not unusual. The strong clubs know how to deal with that, and they don't panic. They stay the course, and they don't make impulsive, reckless decisions.
Everybody panic!
Essendon has been known for making impulsive, reckless decisions because they've been impatient. If we'd have become a top 4 team and we have strong fundamentals in place, both on the field and off the field, then not panicking and not overreacting when things don't go our way is one of the most important things to eventually becoming a top 4 side. Number 6, be ruthless. Now, this might seem obvious. Every club wants to be ruthless in their pursuit of a premiership, but not many clubs actually are as ruthless as people like to think they are. The really successful clubs are ruthless in their pursuit of success. Hawthorn, for example, got rid of Luke Hodge when they thought he was past his use-by date, and he went to Brisbane for a couple of years. They weren't afraid to make tough decisions with other players as well. They took the emotion out of it. He was a club legend, but they said, look, club legend or not, we don't think you're in our future plans. Now, compare that to Dyson Heppell, who's also a club legend at Essendon. Do you think if Dyson Heppell was at the Hawks, Hawthorn would have kept him on for another year? I don't think so. It was nice to keep Dyson on for the last year. We all love Dyson, but really a more ruthless decision would have been to get rid of Dyson Heppell at the end of 2023 and move forward with some younger draft picks rather than keeping him on. Essendon is going to have to make a tough decision at the end of the year with Tom Edwards, who has done his knee, and everybody loves Tom Edwards. Everybody was devastated when he did his knee, including me. I made a couple of videos about it. But they're going to have to make a tough decision and take the emotion out of it. It's all very nice to extend people's careers and to be compassionate, but if the club thinks that he's not suitable to be on the list, they're going to have to make a tough decision. The top clubs are ruthless in their pursuit of success and are not afraid to make tough decisions, and they don't let emotion get in the way of making tough decisions. Essendon has, for a very, very long time, let emotion get in the way of decisions. We probably kept Kevin Sheedy on for 2 or 3 years too long. He was there for 27 years. Probably at the end of 2004 or end of 2005, he was coming to the end of what probably should have been his tenure, and the club just couldn't really make the decision, and they eventually made it maybe 1 or 2 years too late. This is not uncommon at Essendon, and it's not uncommon at unsuccessful clubs. The strong clubs make tough decisions. They make decisions that are not grounded in emotion, and that often means treating star players respectfully, but saying, right, your time is up, we're not going to go with you. Number 7, and this follows on from point 6, respect our heroes, but don't idolise them and see them as saviours. The perfect example was the way James Hird is treated by the fans. The Messiah complex is not a cultural fit for a top 4 team. And I mentioned in the last point, Hawthorn respected Luke Hodge, but they didn't idolise him. And a lot of the successful clubs respect their star players, but don't idolise them. The Messiah complex is generally something that happens around less successful clubs because they don't have any premierships to hold on to. So what they do hold on to is the belief that their star players are saviours because they don't really have any recent success for the supporters to get attached to. So instead, they attach themselves to their players. The Messiah complex is very, very frustrating for me. I don't think it works. I don't think it's a cultural fit for a top 4 team. One of the things you must do is respect your heroes, but don't idolise them. This is a cultural issue among teams like Essendon, and if they're to become a top 4 team, the best thing to do is respect them, but don't idolise them. Number 8, play players where they're best suited, but don't be afraid to experiment. So far, I've focused mainly on what you would call macro issues, off-field issues, cultural issues, having a stable coach, having a stable board, all those sort of things. Some of the on-field things I've noticed is that the successful teams do play their best players where they're suited, but they're not afraid to experiment and be flexible. Sheedy was a perfect example. Sheedy played players in their best positions, but he wasn't afraid to throw it around, and he actually won a premiership in 1984 because of this. Could Mackay or Reid play as a forward? I'm not saying they should play there permanently, but these are tall players with physical capability. How would you know? Maybe a horses for courses. Sometimes you find things out by experimenting with players. Could Gresham be a permanent tagger? Or Perkins? Could Dersma be a good halfback flanker? We only found out that Langford was a 50-goal-a-year forward by luck because Peter Wright went down. Otherwise, we may have never tried him there. Or Brad Scott may have never tried him there. So one thing that top 4 sides do is they're not afraid to be bold and experiment with players. That's something I'd like to see Brad Scott do a little bit more of if we're to ascend up the ladder. The last one, and it follows on from this is more of an on-field thing, is adapting to trends. I've noticed the game is shifting. Moving the ball quickly is really the new trend in football. This is really what the most successful teams are doing. What you don't want to do is get caught out being too conservative. You want to identify successful trends and go with them. But you also don't want to be caught copying sides. If you're the copier, then you're never the initiator. It's all very well to look at a team like Geelong and say, well, we want to be successful like Geelong. But what you really want to do is be the initiator where other clubs look at you and say, well, we want to be like Essendon. If all you're doing is following other clubs, then you're never going to be as good as what they are. They're the ones who are setting the trends. What you want to do is identify the trends, identify where the game is shifting, but you also want to set the trends. You don't want to just copy. So there it is. There's 9 points I've made about how Essendon can potentially become a top 4 team in the next couple of years. A lot of these things we're already doing and we've started. It's not going to happen this year, guys. I think we've accepted that. The narrative around the club did change after the first couple of weeks, particularly after that loss against Adelaide. But it looks like we have put a few things in place. I think the club does know where they're at. I think the club identifies that a stable coach and a stable board is needed. And I think a lot of these things are currently happening, but we haven't seen any results yet. I sort of look upon it as you see a duck in the water and it's floating on the pond, but underneath the water, its legs are going 100 miles an hour. I think there's a lot happening behind the scenes at Essendon, and hopefully we're going to start seeing the results in a couple of years, or hopefully sooner. You never know. This is footy. Sometimes things happen like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it if you could do that. It helps the YouTube algorithm when you do that. It doesn't cost any money, and it would help me out a lot if you can do that. That'd be fantastic. And as always, have a great day, and go Bombers.
Up to win the premiership flag.